Hey everyone, it's Peter Cook from Rock Daydream Nation, and today I've got a very special guest, rock royalty Stu Cook. Now, bass player for Creedence Clearwater Revival, Hall of Fame, also played for a band called Southern Pacific. And what we're going to talk about is this special once and done supergroup called Jackdawg. It was a once and done supergroup, 15 songs, recorded around 1990, released in 2009, but Liberation Hall are releasing it, and it's coming out this month. So, Stu Cook, welcome to Rock Daydream Nation. How are you?
I'm well. Good evening.
Fantastic to have you on the show. First question, were you pleasantly surprised that Liberation Hall were going to reissue the album this year?
Yes, in a word, John McPhee and I had always hoped that we could someday find a larger audience for the project. It was released in 2009, very small affair. So I think CD only, and maybe available by digital download at the time. But no real push, no marketing. To sort of put it out and see, sort of the way Fantasy always did with their product. Uh, John and I had often discussed the possibility of getting a re-release with a label that liked it and would do a proper release. And with that in mind, I set out to see if there was such a label, and happily was referred to Liberation Hall, Arnie Shore. So we're quite happy with the relationship.
To go back to the origins of this group, you need to go back to the group that preceded it, called Southern Pacific. Can you explain to my viewers, how did the three of you meet? That's you, John McPhee, and Keith Knudsen. How did you meet?
I've known John McPhee since the days before Creedence success, actually. John played in a band, a San Francisco Bay Area band uh, called Clover, with Alex Call and Mitch Howie and Huey Lewis and Sean Hopper from
Yes.
Huey and the News. And they were always one of my favorite bands, very popular up north of San Francisco in Marin County. Played a lot of great shows with them. I saw them a lot of times on other bills. We had become, and they were signed by Fantasy Records, ironically. So we were label mates as well. Creedence had a terrific career, and Clover was completely ignored. Uh, Much to my surprise, I thought they were a fantastic band. They might have been too good. If you follow me, they could do too many different styles uh, quite well, and they might have been too diverse in their approach. But anyway, I've known John since the late 60s. Uh, when Southern Pacific was being formed, uh, the original bass player, Jerry Sheff, Elvis's bass player, didn't want to tour. The first album was recorded. The first SP album was recorded. And Glenn D. Harden, Jerry Sheff, James Burton, all of Elvis's guys were the rest of the band besides McPhee, Keith Knudsen, and Timmy Goodman, who was the singer. So when the piano player, the bass player, and the guitar player departed, they had to look for new teammates. And McPhee threw my name in the hat as bass player. And I went down to LA, did a brief audition with the guys, and ultimately landed the spot. That's when I met Keith, who was a longtime drummer with the Doobie Brothers, the real drummer. Uh, the Doobies always had two drummers. He used to joke, the other guy's the lead drummer, I'm the rhythm drummer. And
Yes.
and Keith, he was a fantastic drummer. It was great great opportunity to play with one of the industry's best. And so Southern Pacific went on to do 4 albums for Warner Brothers in Nashville. And we had good radio success. We were able to get placed on wonderful tours, The Judge, Hank Williams Jr., Oak Ridge Boys, who were all at the top of the charts in the late 80s, mid to late 80s. So we had a lot going for us, but we never seemed to really connect at the retail level. I think we might have been not country enough with our earrings and our spurs and so on. A lot of people thought we were making fun of what was a grand tradition in their minds. So anyway, after 5 years, we had some management problems, some label problems. Anyway, after 5 great years, we decided that we would all move on and do something else. And during that time period, John, Keith, and I we're all West Coast guys, Southern California. We thought we really enjoyed playing together, and we thought we'd maybe keep that going, try more music, but in a different direction, which is ultimately what became called Jackdawg.
How did you come up with that name? I'm intrigued.
Okay. Coming up with a band name is one of the hardest things you can do. You can name all of your children, your grandchildren, next door neighbors' children with much more ease. But a band name has to be memorable, but it also has to not attract fire. Like, you don't want people saying, well, what does that mean? Right? Sort of like Creedence Clearwater Revival. What does that mean? Well, whatever you want it to mean. But there was nothing that could be associated with it that you could be compared to up or down. So we had finished recording some 16 songs and didn't have a name. I mean, that was sort of the last thing that we dealt with. And we originally were called Jackdaw, D-A-W.
Right.
And we figured, well, that's a bird, sort of like a raven type of a bird, which we found out later. But we also found out that somebody else had already used that name.
Who would have
So there was
thought
already
that?
a Jack. Yeah, I mean, you pick a name out of the blue,
Yep.
and somebody's already using it, right? So we said, well, I think it was McPhee said, well, why don't we just be Jackdawg? Just put a G on, because by then, we had gone through days and days, list after list of possible contenders.
Mm.
And, Jackdawg sounded cool enough to us. Nobody knows what a jackdawg is. There isn't. There isn't one. So we checked all the boxes.
Yeah, well, definitely a very intriguing name. Describe the chemistry with you three? Was it instant when the three of you are in a room? Was it sort of magic chemistry?
Oh yeah, it was like the Harry Potter. As we got to know, I'd known McPhee, like I said, for decades, and knew him to be very have a dark humor, incredible musical gifts, and supremely intelligent human being. And Keith, I got to know. Keith and John were really good friends from the Doobie Brothers, because Southern Pacific came after the Doobie Brothers. The Doobie Brothers had broken up, and John and Keith were looking for another project, which led to Southern Pacific. But so the more we hung and toured and played together, we developed a friendship and a good musical camaraderie. So
Yeah.
It seemed to work out. Thank you. So we were John's a country boy, but he can rock. I mean, he's understands music, the multiple genres of music to be able to be comfortable whatever situation he's in. And Keith's a good rock and roll drummer, uh, and I'm a rocker. So we thought we'd just follow our own instincts and see what we came up with. It was from day one, it was a blank page. We had no expectations. It actually started, I would call it as a songwriter's project because we had nothing to record, nothing, no music to play until we actually had written some songs.
Mm.
And so, and with that, there was no rules either. It was like, okay, here's a title, here's an idea. And we went from there every day. We started fresh or picked up to finish something from the previous day or week. And so, yeah, it was more like a workshop for us, just to explore, where our musical muses would take us.
Absolutely. And for you, I guess it was a different experience to be in a more of a democracy than maybe some previous bands you've been in.
Well, funny you should use that word. Uh,
I
yeah,
had
it was,
to. Oh, sorry, I had to.
I, and that's a very good lead in. My original band, CCR, was may have started out as a democracy, but it evolved into uh, something else. And in later years, to use the word democracy in any form associated with it would be a clear misnomer. Southern Pacific, on the other hand, was a band of guys full of individual musical ideas. And somebody had an idea. They had agency to say, what about this? Let's try that. I was thinking maybe if you did this here and, it would work with me doing that there. You understand that there was an actual living creative process. Uh, and of course, if your idea was weak, you found out about it real quick. Someone would say, hold that thought until, the next album, or till your third solo album after the fourth hit single, then come back to me and tell me about that idea.
Yeah,
Uh, but so we tried to distill everybody's input into what we thought was the best. And that was an approach that was new to me. I've been in a band with a strong leader and found input from me and input from the other guys was less and less acceptable in the working regime. So this was a breath of fresh air, and it enabled me to find a new way to work, and which I think ultimately, there's all kinds of ways to pull off a career in music, but it's one of them. And I enjoyed being involved in that kind of creative process.
absolutely. Do you think creative tension and sometimes tension within a band can be good creatively, or it's negative? Because I'm sure you've seen it on both sides of the ledger.
Well, I think the way you've asked it, I would have to say that it's negative because when you have a band, you've got a handful of possibly completely different personalities, points of view, uh, skills, talent. Uh, so when you get all those kind of people together, it becomes a balancing act, regardless of the music. When you get into the creative process, uh, there's a tension. Some would call it a pain, that it has to be confronted when you're composing. Let's say it's composing a song is one of the most difficult things I found to do. To actually sit down, figure out what you want to say, and find a way to say it that hasn't been said. There's only a half a dozen things to write songs about, really. You need to find a way to say it in a fresh manner. So there's a lot of personal tension and struggle to be creative, but it it can edge into a darkness when you're working with individual personalities. There can be you can just get right down to hardcore disagreements, right? I want
Mm.
this, and I don't want that. I want this, right? We never. Uh, we had a mentor in Southern Pacific. The Jim Ed Norman, the president of the label, was our producer and our shining light. Really, he believed in the band, and he understood how to balance the personalities and draw out of each what he thought would be the best for the project. Creedence lacked all of that. We were all very insular to the world, didn't trust anybody, wouldn't accept any input or criticism. So it evolved in a completely different way.
Yeah, absolutely. So with Jackdawg, was there a preconceived musical direction that the three of you were sort of aiming for? Because it had much more of a rock sound. Although you can hear the influences of Creedence and Doobie Brothers. Was that something that was preconceived, that you were going to do it in a bit of a rock direction?
Correct. We wanted to get away from country music because we clearly had our skin scraped in that. We thought that even though we weren't country boys per se, that we understood and loved country music enough that we could contribute to the genre, the library of modern country music. Others in Nashville didn't think so, and so we met a lot of resistance with the band. We wore earrings, we wore cowboy boots, but we wore spurs on them. We did little things that I think were perceived as insults
Mm.
by the country music establishment, but we were just having fun,
Maybe you were ahead of your time.
quite possibly. Other bands that followed us, see, there was only one country band at the time, Alabama, which wasn't really a
Mm.
band. It was Randy and Jeff and a bunch of studio musicians and a stable full of writers that provided the material that Alabama recorded. They weren't really a band like Southern
Mm.
Pacific was a band. We wrote,
Yep.
we played, uh, we did it all ourselves. And
Mm.
that was very uncommon in Nashville. But back to your question, the after us, several bands had success uh, after Southern Pacific shoved open some doors. Uh,
Mm.
Bands, duos. Uh, I think us and the Desert Rose Band, uh, and there was one other one. Restless Heart was another country band. They had a lot of success. Desert Rose Band in Southern Pacific, not so much. Although they were a great band, filled with so much talent. That was Chris Hillman's band. Chris Hillman, John Jorgensen, Herb Peterson, uh, Chris from the Byrds, John, a great guitar player, mandolin player, clarinet. Uh, Went on to be Elton John's guitar player later years. Herb's just a great picker from the San Francisco Bay Area. We toured with them. We called it the Hayride from Hell. We had a lot of fun. But Diamond Rio and a lot of other country bands had much more success than we did. They played more by the rules of Nashville, and
Mm.
because Nashville's a publishing town, so it comes down to the song and who's publishing it. And honestly, I've never seen this, but I know it took place before the chart numbers were decided every week. The the three publishing companies would sit down and say, whose turn is it this week to have number one? You had it last week. So and so's turn this week, and it'll be mine the following.
Unbelievable.
It's really sadly, most of the world works like that, I'm afraid.
Yeah.
And come to realize, I've come to realize this in my senior years that there's a much bigger game going on than I'd ever realized. But hey, I can play.
You certainly can. When you were recording the Jackdawg, was there sometimes you'd say, "Oh, that's a bit too Creedence," or "That's a bit too Doobie Brothers"? Did you have to rein yourselves in sometimes when you were working the song through, just to say, "Oh no, that's a little bit too derivative"?
No, I don't think so. In fact, in cases we went the opposite way, like the opening track, "Bayou Rebel."
Mm-hmm.
John and I sat down and said, "Let's do something that circles Stu's roots." I mean that the whole from the title, uh, and the arrangement and so on. We wanted it to have a
Swampy feel,
a
southern
Creedence
swampy feel.
vibe
Yeah.
to it. So I
Have,
mean, we there's a Creedence has gazillion fans. We thought, well, maybe they'd like to hear Stu and John Keith do something with a nod to those roots.
yeah, well, there's no denying with that track that definitely does hark back to that sort of that era. Um, was the recording process a lengthy one, or was it fairly quick fire?
Well, once we had a song completed and we thought, what key, what tempo, what kind of a feel. Jackdawg is clearly a guitar band, right? Uh, so that we had that was pretty much the only restriction, is that it wasn't going to have a lot of synthesizers and keyboards or piano and so on, or mandolins, pedal steel. It was going to be a guitar rock and roll album. That was pretty much our only guardrails.
Yeah. How
And
did
then
the
we
record?
saw,
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, let me just tag that thought. Once we had fleshed out an arrangement for the newly finished composition, then we'd start playing it and seeing where the certain, where the actual arrangement would come together with what we do here, what we should do here, repeat this, go to, then we knock it out. We did them song by song. So we really weren't, each song had its own space, and we gave each song its own, it could speak to us, and we could have a conversation with it and take it where it seemed like it wanted to go.
How did the recording process differ, say, from Creedence?
Well, when Creedence was a garage band, basically, okay. I mean, we even rehearsed in a garage, right? So in Tom Fogerty's garage.
Yep.
So and when we weren't rehearsing there, we were rehearsing in a little shack behind Doug Clifford's home that we called that was the original factory. A room that you could hardly get four people in a set of drums in. It was so small. But Creedence was extremely well rehearsed. I mean, we did not go in the studio until we could nail it in one or two takes.
Right.
Jump forward to Jackdawg. We're no longer garage musicians. We our capability and our chops, our musical maturity had moved to a point where we were actually, we knew who we were. We were good players, and so then we would just start recording. We didn't have to. By then, we'd learned the song because we sat around in the control room, messing around with ideas. And John had his guitar, I'd have my bass. Keith had a set of drumsticks, and we'd be sitting on a sofa in one of the big leather chairs, and we sort of knock out a mental arrangement. Then when we got that far, we'd Keith would head into the control room. John and I'd stay. I mean, into the main room. John and I would stay in the control room and record from there. Keith would be out with the cans on. John and I would just be sitting in front of the monitors playing with Keith. It's all it's a very compact situation. We couldn't have been more than 20 feet, 25 feet apart anyhow, with a big glass, double glass control room window. So we had eye contact. We could, it was really comfortable. I like working like that. Creedence, on the other hand, did everything all in one room, all at one time. Jackdawg is a live album in that sense too. I mean, we played live together.
That's an observation because it does sound like it's ready for the stage.
Yeah, I mean that was the fun part of it. Is actually okay. Now we got something to play. Let's go have some fun.
Yeah,
let's polish this turd.
Absolutely. What's your observations about how recording process has changed over time? Because like in the days in Creedence, it was analog, but now it's all digital and it's just completely sounds compressed and people can just record from different parts of the world. What's your observations? Do you think it's just not the same? It's gone in a wrong direction?
Well, it can certainly be abused. I think, analog was our original love, but times change. Technology, of course, moves forward, and I've always felt that it's best to familiarize yourself. Not dig in and be a dinosaur about this. There's good things that can come from it too. Like I said, it can be abused. One guy can sit in his bedroom and spend a couple years making a record, playing all the parts and so on and so on. But I mean, that is a record. But as a musician, I enjoy playing with people.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, I need the interaction and the push and pull of a band playing rather than playing to a metronome.
Yeah.
So there's also the endless possibility of self and overindulgence with the digital format. You have endless amount of tracks that you can put new parts, noodle new ideas down on, and I guess it becomes harder and harder to determine, when the cake is baked, rather than let's just add one more thing to it. And so there's the fidelity of it aside. Some people say it's too clean, and they miss the warmth of analog, which is just really what they're missing is the limited fidelity.
But it does have a warm sound because those early Creedence records sound timeless, like a lot of classic rock. They just have that sort of timeless quality, a warmth. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, I would. But that is actually a limitation of the technology, not something that if they could have. Now you have albums with 14, 15, 16 songs, so they become a songwriter's vehicle. But a vinyl record could only hold 20, 22 minutes per side. So that was how many songs, pretty much. That's how much content you could put on a record and still keep the volume in the grooves uh, up enough so that when your record came on, it didn't sound much quieter than
Mm.
the other records that preceded it or followed it. It's just physical limitations of the technology, and
I know it's I know it's
that
hypothetical, but do you think Credence, like if they came out in the '90s, do you think they would have just embraced technology, the 24-bit digital? They just would have done boots and all, the whole thing.
oh sure, what do you mean? We'd have been just fine, we had other things going for us, so we had great songs. We were a really rocking unit. Uh, and no one else was doing anything like what we were doing. Well, maybe
Yeah.
in the 90s there were other people. There would have been other people, but where would they have heard it first, right? Is it the chicken or the egg? Uh, no, I think technology should be looked at as a useful tool. It's, but for me, it's got to come back to the music. What are you using it for? What is the end result? Is it something that when you push play or drop the needle, uh, does it make you smile?
Absolutely. So there's two stellar cover songs on this album: Wild Night by Van Morrison and Cold Night for Alligators by Rocky Erickson. What attracted the band to those two tracks?
Well, there's a couple things. The Cold Night for Alligators is a song that I produced for Rocky in the early 80s for a record release. I produced 15 songs, which ultimately came out on two albums, and Cold Night for Alligators was one of them. Bill Bentley, Bill Bentley was a media guy at Warner Brothers Nashville, and he put together a tribute album for Rocky. And he asked Southern Pacific if we would contribute a song, and we liked everybody seemed to think Cold Night for Alligators uh, would be one that we could do a good arrangement of, and likely not going to be done by other artists. Uh, but by then, Southern Pacific had broken up pretty much. It was just John Keith and I in the studio in California, and Kurt living in Nashville, Kurt Howell. So when we were doing the Jackdawg project, we said, let's use the Cold Night for Alligators track as one of ours, because the three of us, that was the first Jackdawg track recorded, actually. That was sort of what gave us the idea that we could continue exploring our own musical sensibilities.
Yeah, the kickstart.
Yeah, exactly, without having to
Yeah.
do a thing, because the Bentley's project was just out of the blue, because there was maybe a dozen different covers of various Rocky songs, some of which the other songs I also produced for Rocky's album, The Evil One. And so that probably, now that you mention it, that harkens back to the very seed of Jackdawg. Now, Wild Night, when Clover was a struggling Bay Area band, McPhee had a reputation as a solid multi-instrumentalist session player. Uh, Got calls to play on a lot of people's records, Steve Miller Band, a lot of people. Uh, and one day he got a call from Van Morrison to come play on Van's new single,
Don't
which
say no.
was
Don't say no to Van.
the sing the single was Wild Night. So John played pedal steel on that hit record. And when we were kicking around the ideas of, let's do a couple of covers. I don't know if it was Keith or John or Stu. Somebody said, "Well, what about this? If we could put a new spin on Van's classic, uh, it'd be like uh, full circle for John, right? Coming all the way back to one of his first real global showcases. The pedal steel is incredibly important instrument in that arrangement.
Yeah, absolutely. It's fundamental.
Yeah. So the hardest part about that was figuring out the lyrics. This is pre-internet, right? You can't just Google Wild Night and come up with the lyrics. Uh, we had to sit and listen to it daily for 2 weeks to figure out what Van was saying. He's a well-noted mumbler of his lyrics when he's singing. It's his signature style.
Couldn't John have rung him and said, "Hey Van, can you tell me what the lyrics are?"
Yeah, I guess he could have. That never came up, actually. We were doing this from the outside.
Yeah,
What is he singing there? It took a couple of weeks, but we think we got the lyrics and the words right.
absolutely. There were 15 songs recorded, 15 or 16. Were there other
There
songs
was
that
there was 16 songs
16?
recorded. We left one off because we thought that it was I think we've written it after we'd thought we tied a bow on our efforts. Song called "In the Flesh," and it just didn't. It wasn't important enough to us to have it included. I didn't want to get into a non-musical kind of debate with the record company. I think they liked the 15, and we were good with the 15. And even though we had written one more, it was superfluous at the least.
Yep. Were there other songs that demoed but just didn't make the cut? Work through ideas that you just sort of abandoned and moved on to the next one beyond the
No,
16?
no, we wrote this. We wrote the 15 plus one, and that was it. We thought, okay, let's see where we can take this now. I mean, we could write forever and record forever, but logically, the plan was, okay, we like it. Let's start finding about if there's somebody in the music business that agrees with us.
Yeah.
We found a manager, Joe Gottfried, who owned a really famous recording studio, Sound City, in the San Fernando Valley.
Yes.
Fleetwood Mac. Lots of people recorded at Sound City.
Yep.
Very famous location. But he liked us, and he started giving us input, guidance, and from there, we were hoping that we would get a label deal and get a release, and possibly even tour. The usual things.
Yep.
Then suddenly Joe passed, and there we were without a captain of the ship, as it were. And, we on our own were unable to generate any real excitement with it. We didn't have a lot of connections at the time, and at the time the music scene was changing dramatically to the Pacific Northwest, Seattle grunge. This is a Jackdawg's like a 80s polished production effort, and
Yep.
the popular music had taken a turn in a different direction. So we had that going against us as well.
That must have been incredibly frustrating that you guys put so much effort into it, and it is a strong album, but just one of those things that happened. You just couldn't get it out.
That's showbiz. I always say that the musicians union hall is filled with guys that could play me under the table. And here I am in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame because I was in the right place at the right time with the right magic. The serendipity, the universe lined up for Creedence Clearwater, and guys who devoted their life to being the best with their art are playing the Holiday Inn.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's it.
Did you the three of you think about just maybe to really push it and showcase it, do a bit of a tour of road show it?
No, we did not.
Is that something that you were thinking about personally? Maybe we need to get it out.
If you recall back in the day, the dynamic, the career trajectory was flipped. Back then, you had an album or you had your product.
Mm.
It was released. If it was successful, if it got airplay, then you toured. Today, because of the completely fragmented financial structure, for want of a better term, of the music industry, it's much more feasible to tour and play than it is to make any kind of a living off of your recorded work.
Mm.
So the steps in 1980 were record, release, and tour. Now it's play, build a following, do a couple singles or an EP. Hopefully you'll get noticed, start playing, doing regional tours and so on and so forth, build a following, do online, use the interwebs to get your music out. Is the 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 career path is completely flipped from what it was. So
Mm.
we knew no other way. It was like, okay, first we get a release, get an album, get a deal, get a release, get an agent, get on a tour. So no, we
Absolutely.
never got to that. Unfortunately, we never got to that point.
Sometimes just great music falls between the cracks like this album. Just one of those things. I do want to talk about Creedence very briefly. Songs like
Sure.
Bad Mood Rising, Proud Mary, Looking Out My Back Door are a part of a pantheon of classic rock. Did you ever think at the time when you were laying down those tracks that these songs would last and reach out to future generations? Because it just has an enduring sort of appeal.
Yeah, it's quite incredible, isn't it? No. We thought that like everything pop, we were in the moment. You know, there's this, there's the top 10 this week and then the top 10 next month, and they're usually different. Uh, which was one of the reasons that we recorded and released singles one after the other, was to fear of becoming forgotten. Uh, we thought that's how the machine worked. We had no notion, probably didn't even hope that we would be remembered in 10 years, let alone 50. And this really came home to me. Creedence's careers we've been through every format. We've started with vinyl, then we went to 4-track, then we went to 8-track, then we went to cassette, then we went to CD, and now streaming. Well, digital downloads, and then streaming. So we've been exposed, available in every format known, every technology known uh, since recorded music came to be. But it really hit me home, came clear to me when Doug Clifford and I were, for 25 years, we did this great music project called Creedence Clearwater Revisited, and which was a band that we put together with Elliot Easton from the Cars, Steve Gunner, uh, John Tristeo was our original singer from a band named People. Uh, and when I saw we're playing in the 1990s through the aughts, and we retired in 2020. So pretty much the last 25, 30 years, I could see that we had a whole different audience. They were all young, that the music had transcended multiple generations, which was like, wow, this was completely eye-opening for me. And when people would leave our concerts, they were all in such a good mood, so uplifted. It was almost, I risk sounding overly religious or devout about the whole thing, but it seemed like they had just been to had some kind of spiritual experience, that the music had touched them so so deeply. Even though we weren't the original band, I thought we did a highly commendable job of pulling off, celebrating and honoring uh, the Revival band for 25 years. We had a great second career. But now we have a larger audience than ever. Last year, Rolling Stone magazine named Creedence Clearwater Revival the #1 American rock band, 2024. #1 American rock band. I mean, where did that come from?
Well, the popularity just grows because, like in Australia, classic rock radio, you'll hear at least a Creedence once every hour. Phenomenally popular in these parts. Look, apologies in advance, and I know you've probably been asked this question 1,000 times, so it'll be 1,001. Sorry. But was there ever a time that it was seemed possible that the whole band would have reunited, you would have got back together with John? Was there ever a hope that it was maybe possible?
Well, yes, in my mind, but apparently not in John's. I'll illustrate. The three of us, Doug, John, and Stu here, got together and played. We took over the bandstand at our 20th high school reunion. Uh, we were invited up on stage, like to play one song or something like that. We played for over an hour, and so I felt, wow, John's actually playing with us again. I thought, my impression that he wouldn't have anything to do with us, but I guess he just couldn't resist the excuse me, his ego couldn't resist being up there and being in the limelight again. If it wasn't professionally, at least it was, for our high school mates. I even reached out to him afterwards, and he pretty much blew me off. Just said, I said, hey, you think we go have a cup of coffee together, or something like that sometime? And he said, no, not interested in playing with you guys ever. Well, you just played with us. That was different. Okay, was his response. So then again, the four of us played at Tom Fogerty's wedding.
Mm.
And we took over the band, the house band's instruments and the stage again for another hour of impromptu Creedence. And the same after that. It was like, I did it I did it for me, not for you.
Yeah.
Okay. Uh, it was, there's some, I personally understand what happened. Uh, and my view of it is, sure, why not give it a try? I don't, nobody, we're all 80 years old. How can you, whatever happened cannot be that big a factor in the years since, right? It wasn't like it kept happening over and over and over again. It happened once, a great band broke up, but there's still hard feelings on John's part. So I'm afraid that, and Tom's gone. Uh, I'm afraid that a revival is not in the cards.
If you're at an airport lounge and you saw him, would you go up and say hello?
Well, I'm a open, congenial guy. I have feelings like everyone,
Mm,
but I don't hold grudges.
yep,
I mean, I can get along with almost anyone. I'm finding some people that I can't get along with now, uh, given the tenor of the times, if you follow me. Uh, but yeah, I'm a fairly well balanced adult. I think I can handle most any situation thrown at me with some aplomb and decency. So yeah, I mean, I've got no problem with sitting down with anybody.
absolutely. One final question about Creedence. So, if you had to talk to somebody and introduce them to the band and say, this is the signature album as your gateway to this wonderful band, what album would you put forward
Bayou country.
and why? Why would you pick that? Why is that special to you that you'd say, this is the album you must hear?
Well, it's got a cool cover, and it has the best sound of all of our albums. I think that it captured the band's sound better than all of the subsequent albums. I thought the albums after that, while they had great playing and great material, the sound was missing. The sound was compromised, too thin. Bayou Country had that was when the internal function of the band, the workings of the band changed, started to change into a to less of a band and more of a one guy trying to force his will on everybody else. It was still workable as we went forward. Everybody still made contributions, whether John liked them or not. Uh, but he became more and more dictatorial, more adamant about, from the songwriter's point of view, how he wanted it done, and we were still hanging on to the band, and we played it the way we wanted to play it. For fact, I never played any take ever the same. From take one to take two to take three to take four, that's it. We got it. I never played the same arrangement ever, uh, just to keep it me. I
Distinctly
changed
you.
I changed something in every verse, every chorus, every take. I played it differently. Just a little, let's try this here, let's try that there. Uh, Always trying to keep it in my mind, like, yeah, here's the shape of it, but I don't have to be, I'm not going to be exact because someone says this is what you do. A lot of the stuff, you know, it's Creedence is not rocket science. Is three chord for the most part rock and roll that we all learned off the radio together at the same time. And So what I'm hitting at is that a lot of this stuff is obvious to all of us. We didn't need to be told what to do, right? Uh, we all understood we understood our roots, and we all liked the same kind of music, which was one of our early attractions to each other. And so for one guy to claim responsibility for everything is just absurd to me. So it's kind of confrontational, I guess, but that's how I feel. And at the time, I wouldn't let it happen.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, the music does live on, and one thing I think Creedence had was a lot of feel and a lot of groove and a lot of swing, and you're part of that sound, and it's the chemistry of that band, isn't it?
Thank you. I hear that comment. That's probably the most frequent comment I hear about Creedence is that those guys had a groove, and that's Doug Clifford and Stu Cook.
Absolutely. You can't deny the groove, folks. It's there. And there's groove and Jackdawg as well. So, folks,
I have
Liberation
to say,
Records, I've got to pitch that in. We've got to talk about Jackdawg. There's a lot of groove in that band.
DPK, I played with three great drummers professionally in my life: Doug Clifford, Keith Knutson, and a man named Ron Wixow, who's played with Cher, Steve Miller. He's currently with Steve Miller Band. He subbed for Doug when Doug was ill in Creedence Revisited. Doug picked him to be his understudy. Three great drummers. But Keithy K was just had the greatest ideas as a drummer. You know, the drum fills, the turnarounds. His drum parts were incredibly well thought out and always amazing to me.
Absolutely. Well, Stu, it's been wonderful having a trip down memory lane. And as I said, anything I can do to promote this album. As I said, some great albums just fall between the cracks because things happen.
Oh, thank you for saying that. After living with it, it came out and we did it in 80, 81. It came out in 2009, and here it is 2025. And sometimes I can't be sure if it's good or if it's just average, but to hear people that don't have any skin in the game say that they like it, makes me feel good. Thank you.
Absolute pleasure to talk to you. Please check it out. Liberation Record, Liberation. I'll put the website and all the various links. Pleasure talking to you, Stu, and hope your cold gets better. And
I think I'm on the mend. This is 2 weeks now.
Absolutely. Maybe have some of that French red wine. That might ease the pain. I'm not sure.
You know, I caught this cold in Marrakesh, and I've been so every time I sneeze, I remember Morocco.
Absolutely. Pleasure meeting you. Thank you. All the best, Stu. Rock Daydream Nation. Cheers.
Cheers. Hope to speak with you again. Have a great.
We will.
Have a great.
Indeed. Thank you.